Sarah stood silently beside the polished oak coffin. The cold London sky hung heavy above, casting a gray veil over the gathered crowd. Her heart pounded in her chest as she looked down at Michael's still face. The man she had loved for so many years, now gone forever. The air was thick with murmurs and soft sobs. Yet, Sarah felt an unbearable weight pressing down on her. This was not just grief, it was something deeper. Something she was afraid to confront. James, her son, stood a few steps behind. His jaw was clenched tightly, his eyes dark with emotions Sarah could not name. As the priest said the final prayers, James suddenly stepped forward. The sharp slap that landed on Sarah's cheek startled everyone. "You had a roof over your head because of Dad," James said, his voice breaking but fierce. Sarah's breath caught. The words pierced through the silence, unraveling years of silence and secrets. In that moment, the cracks in their family could no longer be hidden. Sarah stood frozen, her cheek tingling from the sting of James's slap. The eyes of the mourners turned towards them, whispers rippling like a breeze through the gathered crowd. James's anger was raw and undeniable, but so was the pain behind it. She remembered the years before Michael's death, years filled with tension and quiet arguments that no one outside could see. The walls of their London home had witnessed fights and cold silences. Sarah often wondered if the love she tried to hold on to was enough. James's words echoed inside her mind. She knew he blamed her for many things, decisions she had made, promises she had broken. Yet beneath her own grief, Sarah carried a guilt heavier than any sorrow. As the service ended, people began to leave, but Sarah and James remained behind. Neither spoke. The silence between them was louder than any words. The drive back to their modest home in East London was heavy with unspoken words. The streets passed by under a dull sky, familiar yet foreign in the shadow of recent events. Sarah glanced at James, who stared out the window, his face unreadable. Inside, the silence deepened. The house seemed emptier, without Michael's laughter and steady presence. Sarah wandered through the rooms, memories flooding in, family dinners, shared smiles, and arguments long past. James sat alone in the living room, the weight of his anger and grief pressing down like the London fog outside. Sarah knew this was only the beginning of a journey neither of them wanted to take. She longed to bridge the growing distance, to mend the invisible wounds that time and pain had carved into their hearts. Days passed slowly in their East London home. The echoes of Michael's absence were felt in every corner. Sarah kept busy with small chores, but her mind was elsewhere, haunted by memories and regrets. James grew colder, retreating into himself. He avoided conversations, his silence louder than any argument they once had. Sarah wondered what had truly driven the wedge between them, what secrets were buried beneath their shared grief. One rainy afternoon, Sarah found herself flipping through an old photo album. Pictures of happier times stared back at her, smiles, holidays, moments frozen in time. She longed to turn back the clock, to heal the wounds before they festered. But some wounds, she feared, ran too deep. The tension between Sarah and James finally broke one evening. The quiet that had filled their home was shattered by raised voices and raw emotions. James stood by the window, rain streaking the glass behind him. "You don't understand, Mum," he said, voice trembling. "Dad wasn't just the man who put a roof over your head. He was the one who held this family together." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I loved him, James. I did everything I could. But it wasn't enough," James replied sharply. "You made choices that hurt us all. I resented you for that." The room felt smaller, the distance between them growing, yet more visible. They both knew this was not the end, but a painful step towards something neither dared to name. After their confrontation, a heavy silence settled between Sarah and James. The walls of their East London home seemed to echo, with words left unsaid. Sarah spent sleepless nights reflecting on her past choices. She wondered if there was a way to explain the decisions she made, decisions she hoped would protect her family, but had instead caused pain. James, meanwhile, wrestled with his own feelings. He wanted to blame his mother, yet deep down, he missed the father who had once been the family's anchor. One evening, Sarah found James sitting alone in the dimly lit kitchen. She approached cautiously, her voice soft. "James, I know I hurt you. I never wanted to." James looked up, eyes moist but guarded. "It's not just about hurt, Mum. It's about the truth we avoided." For the first time since Michael's death, the two began to bridge the gap with honest words. The days that followed were filled with long conversations, sometimes painful, often filled with tears. Sarah and James began to unravel the tangled threads of their past. Sarah confessed mistakes she had made, decisions taken in fear and desperation. She spoke of struggles she had hidden, the burden of keeping the family afloat while Michael battled his own demons. James listened, his anger slowly softening. He shared his own feelings of abandonment, the loneliness he felt growing up, and the moments he wished his mother had been there. In the quiet of their London home, walls that had held secrets for years started to come down. Slowly, a fragile understanding took root. As the weeks passed, Sarah and James found moments of peace amidst the storm. They began to rebuild their relationship, piece by fragile piece. They shared quiet breakfasts, revisited old memories with bittersweet smiles, and started opening their hearts in ways they hadn't dared before. The house, once heavy with sorrow, slowly began to feel like home again. But the path to healing was not simple. Old wounds still throbbed, and trust had to be earned anew each day. Yet in the midst of their pain, a small light flickered. Hope. Sarah realized that forgiveness would not erase the past, but it could help them face the future together. One chilly morning, as Sarah sorted through Michael's belongings, she found an old, unopened letter tucked away in his study drawer. The envelope was yellowed with age, the handwriting familiar yet foreign. Curiosity and fear mingled as Sarah carefully opened it. Inside was a confession from Michael, a secret he had kept hidden for years, one that explained much of the pain and silence that had shadowed their family. Sarah's hands trembled as she read, her heart aching with a mix of sorrow and relief. This letter was a key to understanding, a bridge between past wounds and future healing. She knew this revelation would change everything. But the question remained, how would James react? That evening, Sarah and James sat together in the small kitchen, the letter lying between them. The rain tapped softly against the window, as if nature itself was listening. Sarah read aloud Michael's words, his regrets, fears, and hopes. The confession revealed struggles with inner demons and a desperate love for his family, even when he failed to show it. James listened quietly, tears tracing lines down his cheeks. The anger that once filled him began to dissolve into understanding. For the first time in years, they allowed themselves to grieve not just for Michael, but for the family they lost and the family they still could become. Outside, the rain washed the streets of East London, as inside, two hearts began to heal.